This fic includes graphic depictions of violence, survivor's guilt, and alcohol abuse. Bandages and Salt. Baccano Stray Dogs and Percy Jackson. By Salt Stick on AO3. Read by Lily6645. Summary. Percy Jackson as Danzai Asumo. Percy Jackson was supposed to be the child of prophecy, but when Thalia peers back into the demigods of Camp Half-Blood's lives, he decided to leave camp and the prophecy to her. When he gets home to find his mother dead, apartment on fire, and him on the suspect list due to past criminal offenses, he moves to the streets. Months later, 13-year-old Percy finds himself making a deal with Zeus to let him fly just once to another country, Japan. When found by a port mafia doctor, Mori, Percy renames himself Danzai Asumo. But the past refuses to stay forgotten for long as he nears the age of the prophecy and all of the chaos that ensues after when worlds collide once more. Notes. So I wanted to clear up a few things before you read this. 1. I do not own any of the characters from either series. Only the idea. Anything that you recognize belongs to the original authors. 2. This story is being cross-posted on Wattpad, so if you think you recognize it, that's why. 3. Most, but not all, of the story is going to be written in first person, because the original 5 Percy Jackson books are written in first person, and so are a good number of the Baccano Stray Dogs light novels. So this is just easier for when we get into the Last Olympian stuff. 4. The Percy Jackson characters' appearances are based off of the books because when I first started writing this, over a year ago, they had only just announced that they were casting, so I had no idea who was going to play any of them, but I'm really excited for the show. 5. I am not going to even touch the DC of Angels stuff because it's not finished and I'm not going near that with a 10-foot pole. Sorry. 6. If you're still here, thanks. This is going to be fun. See the end of work for more notes. Chapter 1, Volume 1. A storm rages over Camp Half-Blood the night that Tyson left for the Cyclopes Forges at Poseidon's court. Due to the Golden Fleece having healed Thalia's pine tree sufficiently, the storm passed over camp like normal. However, this knowledge did nothing to help the foreboding feeling that had placed itself in my chest. My predictions always had a knack of coming true, and as if I was one of the 3 fates myself, they were almost never pleasant. My predictions were never wrong, no matter how much I might want them to be. Lightning danced in the sky above camp as I fell asleep, as if the sky was sharing my feelings as well. My dreams were just as restless as they have been for weeks now. Demigod's dreams were almost never just dreams, but visions not meant to be easily brushed off as some nightmare's dreamscape. When I opened my eyes in the dream, I saw the same cliff that I saw a year ago when Annabeth, Grover, and I had snuck into the underworld. It was the cliff that Luke's shoes tried to drag Grover down into. Tartarus waiting down there, with monsters and creatures older than some of the gods themselves. I could hear a voice calling from down below, taunting me. Palladius sits alone in the cave, fooling himself into believing that he has won a great battle, Kronos. Sickening voice calling up to me. What stops you from being the same as him? And there it was, a source for my uneasiness. Something had felt off since we sent Clarice back with the fleece. It seemed as if Luke let us go too easily. Now I know that's because he had. My dream changed as I heard Kronos' acidic laugh. This time I was following my brother, Tyson, down to Poseidon's court. On a deep blue throne, with coral decorating it, sat a man that somehow looked regal in a fisherman's clothing. As if noticing my presence, he looked me in the eyes and spoke the same two words that had been mailed to me days ago. Brace yourself. I woke up with a start. There was a loud pinging at my door. Though annoying, it could not yet be called persistent, since the perpetrator of the noise let themselves into my cabin before I could even call out to them. Grover. The half-goat was stuttering something about Annabeth and the hill. She's lying there, just lying there, was the most coherent sentence that the boy could manage to form. The look in his eyes wasn't that of grief or worriedness like I would have expected if Annabeth had been attacked while on guard duty last night, or if she had been killed. Instead, there was an intense look of panic, worriedness, and above all, fear. Something was off. I ran outside across the central yard with Grover, following close behind me. Dawn was just breaking on what would have been another pleasant day at camp. The horn for breakfast had not yet rung, but still the whole camp was alive due to the event happening at Half-Blood Hill. The campers were staring and coming out of their cabins, whispering, following us as we ran to the hill. I couldn't help but to recall my dreams as we ran. Some of the other campers joined us in some bizarre fashion of armor and pajamas. Kronos' strange proclamation and my sense of foreboding. I think I'm starting to understand where this is going, and I wasn't sure I liked it all that much. A familiar clop of horse hooves rang in my ears, and out of the side of my eye I saw Chiron galloping up beside us. His face was grim. The centaur grabbed me by my arm, hurriedly swinging me up onto his back, his actions telling just how dire the situation was, since this was something the man would normally never do. We thundered to Half-Blood Hill. Chiron was mumbling something to himself, like a scientist just figuring out why the experiment had not quite gone the way that he had wanted. "Curse the Titan Lord," he whispered. "He's tricked us again, given himself another chance to control the prophecy." I didn't have to ask what he meant. We came upon the top of the hill, everyone lifelessly moving out of the way, their faces all similarly stuck like they had seen a ghost. We stopped at the base of the tree. There, A strange girl was lying. Annabeth, still clad in her Greek armor, was kneeling next to the girl. Chiron was speaking to himself again.
"The fleece had healed the poison from the tree,"
he whispered, just loud enough for me to hear.
"But it seems that the poison was not the only thing that the tree had purged."
I leapt off Chiron's back and went to the girl. Chiron was screaming at me to wait, but I ignored the centaur. Kneeling by the girl's side, I studied her as I put my hand to her cool forehead. She was freezing, but alive. The girl was dressed somewhere between the style of punk and goth. A black shirt made ineffective by the holes in it from some monster's claws. The tattered black jeans of a street kid, and a well-kept leather jacket with buttons on it of bands that I had never heard of before. "She needs nectar and ambrosia," I called out. I had none on me, but I figured that at least one of the campers that had taken the time to throw on armor would have at least thought to bring something to help any wounded. The girl below me had just been removed from the tree and the fleece's care, and if no one did anything fast, her father would have to turn her into a tree once more.
"Come on, what's wrong with you people? Let's get her to the big house!"
I screamed at them. I knew what was wrong with them. The demigods were too caught up in their own shock to be able to function effectively. The campers that had all fought and won against monsters were now standing uselessly around us. Still, someone moved, just not a camper. The girl in question took a shaky breath below me. Her movements reminded me of someone who had just woken up from a nightmare that they had been unable to escape. She coughed as her eyelashes fluttered open to reveal startling electric blue eyes. She stared at me, those same eyes holding a question in them.
"Who?"
she stuttered. I cut her off, not wanting her to waste her energy on something so pointless.
"I'm Percy," I told her. "You're safe now."
The girl commented on having a strange dream of dying. I didn't tell her that this had happened, nor how long ago it happened. This girl was the very same girl from my vision not too long ago. The one that had traveled with Grover, Luke, and Annabeth. The person that I had been told would either be my best friend or my worst enemy. Though I already knew her name before she said it, I asked anyways.
"I'm Thalia," the girl said. "Daughter of Zeus."
Thalia passed out not much longer after that. She must have exhausted her limited energy while speaking. I glanced around and couldn't help but feel disappointed at the still shocked faces of the campers. My cousin was light in my arms as I picked her up and carried her down Half-Blood Hill. I would have to talk to Chiron about getting her on a proper diet now that she's no longer a street kid or a tree. My movement must have woke some of the campers up from their stupor, because the next second I felt the wind of bodies rushing past me. Some of the older Apollo cabin members were running down the hill, golden hair blazing in the morning sun, to the big house to prepare a spot for Thalia in the infirmary. I arrived a minute or so later. The place was bustling with movement. One of the campers directed me to a bed and helped me place Thalia down on it.
"Need a hand?"
I asked the older boy. The camper was reluctant, but after glancing at the chaos surrounding us, he sighed in resignation. Sure, the nectar and ambrosia are over there. He pointed to a tall cabinet. Grab some of both. I looked at the condition of Thalia's body for a second and asked, child size amount? She doesn't look like she could handle much more than that. Even though Thalia looked to be about 15, having still aged while she was a tree, she was still weak from the poison. The camper's face became puzzled for a moment and then seemed to wash over with a pleasant surprise. That's right. He nodded at me while smiling. Over the next 2 days, I spent most of my time in the infirmary helping the Apollo cabin with the minor day-to-day demigod injuries, so someone could always keep an eye on Thalia and her condition. I learned how to dress wounds, perform stitches, and do other manual medical tasks that were too small to really justify the use of ambrosia. You sure you're not a child of Apollo? The same camper from before joked at one point. I only gave him a playful smile while messing with the water from a nearby pitcher as if to prove my point. The camper sighed jokingly and watched as I maneuvered the water and refilled all the patient's cups. Spending time here has helped with my control. Despite all the positive effects of my being here, my motive was not to help, but to observe. I listened to the way the campers talked and gossiped about Thalia's sudden reemergence. The campers were scared of what was to come. Now that there was a new child of a broken oath, there was a new chance for Kronos to control the prophecy. Though no one outright said it, I could tell that most campers were wary of the girl for this very reason. Anytime someone came into the infirmary, they made sure to give Thalia a wide berth. In her first life, the sleeping girl had been very close to Luke. They were like family. The campers were worried that this closeness, to them, she was a loose cannon waiting to explode. However, something told me this wasn't the case, even though I know that their fears were plausible. I couldn't seem to make myself care about them. If Annabeth, a girl that was desperately and disgustingly in love with Luke, could stand against him, so could Thalia. During the time that Thalia was asleep, Grover and Annabeth barely left her side. This was the other reason that I offered to help. It was easier to study people when they didn't know that was what you're doing. For this part, Grover seemed stuck somewhere between sadness and relief. Thalia was the girl whose responsibility for her death had been carried on his shoulders for years now. The thought of her being back was like drinking nectar after the hardest battle of your life. Annabeth couldn't stop staring at Thalia. Every few minutes she would touch the sleeping girl in some way. It was like Thalia was checking to make sure this wasn't all a dream, that her friend was really back. Chiron stopped by on the second day. The look he gave Thalia was almost fatherly. If I were to guess, he and Annabeth had talked since Thalia came back. They both seemed determined to keep her on the path of Olympus and its preservation rather than ruin. On the night of the second day since Thalia's emergence, I was cleaning the storage while the three were sitting with Thalia. It's like she's auditioning for Sleeping Beauty. I commented while walking over to them.
Minus the old-timey clothing.
Annabeth shot me an acidic look.
Okay, not funny.
Just then, the Sleeping Beauty in question concluded her audition. The girl's eyes fluttered open.
Where?
She didn't get to finish her question as Annabeth threw herself at Thalia.
Welcome back to the land of the living, Miss Grace,
Chiron said. He smiled warmly at the girl.
Maybe once you're better, I could teach you some tricks like controlling the mist.
Oh. Hey, once you're better, let's go on a quest together, like old times, Annabeth exclaimed. She looked like a little kid again. Oh.
Yeah, I'll come too,
Grover added.
Yeah,
Thalia said. She seemed to be coming out of being startled. I'd like that. Watching the three of them, it felt like losing something that was never rightfully mine in the first place. Like I was the interloper instead of her. They were all too consumed with each other to notice that I was gone. Notes. I have Tumblr under the name Seaskate, if anyone wants to find me there. This is the end of Chapter 1 of Bandages and Salt, Bach Stray Dogs x Percy Jackson by Seaskate on AO3. I'm sorry for the long wait, and I hope you liked this chapter. Hope you kittens have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, kittens.